And let's tune into what it is for our ego to recede a little bit more this week and for our soul to ascend. And we have a whole week of just getting to meditate on this and really rise into our soul natures. And that's a great, great blessing. Hi, friends. Hey, everybody online. Last time I gave a shout out to Mom. This time it's hi, Dad. Also, I got some nice messages last time when I said that, and another one of my Divine Mother channels in this life, and she said, "Hey, I'm watching too." And now I look out here and I see Glenda and Padma. We're so blessed. All the Divine Mothers that look after us. Just thought I would remind us all of that. This topic, Palm Sunday, is an amazing topic, actually. It is so deep. It's really as deep as we want to go. We can tune into this right now. And Sunday, of course, from the reading, we see is the Sunday that Jesus entered the holy city of Jerusalem on a donkey. And he was greeted as a king. He was received by the people as the Savior. And it's this moment of just, I like to think of it as the pure realization that everyone had of who he was in that moment. And we can take a moment to bask in that, I think, before we kind of step into what happens next. Because there was this moment of Palm Sunday when everyone saw who he was and there wasn't so much confusion. He rode in on a donkey, and that is, you can tune into that if you like also. I have been. Yesterday, I had a really fun experience. We had a farm day, and after lunch, when Leo sees me, often the first thing he says to me is, "Truck ride." And he started saying that to me, and I said, "Why don't you ask your mom?" And Mom was right behind me when I said that, and she said, "You can take him." So I said, "Okay, here we go. Let's go for the truck ride." My point here is that Leo's going to ride a truck into Jerusalem. He's not going to ride a donkey. And as we walked outside to go, I got down the steps, and there was two of the other young boys who are often running around the farm, Gabri and Elias. And they said, "Where are you going?" And we said, "Truck ride." And so, of course, they wanted to get in the truck too. And so they get in the back of the truck, and then here's Tulsi Dog. I'm not going to leave him out of the truck. So he's out, and they're all in the back of the truck, and we've got our little Leo escort. He's just in the front seat yelling, "Truck ride." And we have to go by the farmhouse to drop something off in the back of the truck. So we drive past Lajana's cottage. There's Lajana, and she's coming down her steps, and she says, "Oh, I can take Leo." She sees him in the passenger seat with me. I'm like, no, you don't understand. This is Leo's thing. We're going on a truck ride. And she said, "Okay, I'm coming too." And so she got in the passenger seat and put Leo on her lap, and off we went on the truck ride. And I just was thinking about Palm Sunday and Christ going into Jerusalem, and there was Leo and on his donkey, just with all of us, with the pure realization of who he was. None of us had any resistance to his request. We all knew that it was the right thing, and it was coming from the Spirit, I think you could say. So that's us basking in Palm Sunday. And also there's the other half of the spiritual path. And this is kind of what happens as we move on in this Easter week, arriving at Friday, where Jesus is crucified, and eventually next Sunday, where we have the resurrection. And one thing that's nice about this, and the readings from the Rays of the One Light, is they give us this opportunity each week, not just the minister trying to think about what they're going to say when they get up here, but each one of us to really dive into the essence of this week. Because so many times I've found whatever that theme is in the Rays of the One Light, it just comes up unequivocally over and over throughout. It's like it's for that moment. And so I found myself reading the Bible this week and just tuning into like what led up to Christ's entry into Jerusalem. What were the things that happened? And it was very fascinating. I invite you all to just tune into that for yourselves, kind of what the steps were. But basically the last act that Christ had before he came to Jerusalem was he went and he raised Lazarus from the dead. And he didn't do this even in a way that many people expected. He waited. And Lazarus was dead for, I think it was 3 or 4 days, and had been entombed. And at that point, can you imagine the test of the faith of the disciples, of Martha and Mary, Lazarus' siblings? He's been dead for 4 days. They actually say, we can't take off the sepulcher now. We can't open this up. He's going to be rotten. And Christ goes in and he raises him from the dead. And out he comes bandaged up. I imagine mummified. That's the depiction, but it actually describes something similar to that in the Bible. And when the Pharisees sees this, that's the final straw. He had gone too far. God was too clearly revealed in this soul, and the Pharisees stepped in and said no more. And not only did they step in and say we need to address this in Christ and to deal with this guy, but they also said we're going to need to kill Lazarus because he's the living testimony of what just happened. And now we move into the week. And it's an unbelievable thing to consider that that's what the stage was set for what happens in the crucifixion of the Savior. But when we tune into the essence of these stories, it's one thing to tune into the story outwardly, which we're doing now. And it's the next step for each one of us. And many of you already do this. I don't need to pretend like I'm the only one who knows this. This is our story. Of course, it happened with a real person and a real soul, but this is our story, the story of our own soul and what we go through to become free in God. And so the symbolism in this is important for all of us to relate to, because we have both. We experience both the joy of Palm Sunday in our own souls rising and being received in this world, and we experience the crucifixion of the ego, which must simply die. Yogananda said, I killed Yogananda a long time ago. And he also said, when this I shall die, then shall I know who I am. This is an unavoidable part of the process that we all go through to be reborn into Christ completely. And on the way, we experience this incrementally. We can look at our own lives and see what are the key moments in my own spiritual life where I turn to God. What are the key aspects that put me on the path? Something that happened very tangibly for each one of us. There's these things that shake us, that are these little crucibles where the flame gets turned up and the steel starts to become forged. And this is the real spiritual life. It's no joke. The joy is there too, and underneath it, we have to hold on to that joy, even when we can't find it outwardly. We know that it's under there. And what happens is when we go through these things, one, and then maybe next year or in 6 months, another, we go through these things where the flame gets turned up and that we get burned. We get a little bit of distance from them over time, and we start to look back and we see how we are getting changed in the process. Maybe it's for us to see, maybe it's not. When it's for us to see, God shows us. And when we start to see that, what we go through and how we come out on the other side, it gives us faith. It gives us the faith to go through these things and be even stronger the next time. I would just recently returned from Hong Kong, and on the flight back, Divine Mother often just sits you right next to that person, that magic person. And I was thinking, God, I stayed up all night last night. I cannot wait to go to sleep. And then Divine Mother was like, good luck, bro. Just sits down. It's just the 2 seats right next to each other. And the guy comes in, sits down. He's moving pretty quick. And we just calm down together. I start breathing in myself, but I'm breathing for him too. And then he says, are you going home? And then we start talking. And he's a really wonderful guy. I couldn't believe it. He's lived for 15 years in Japan, but originally is from Montana and lived in this area. And we start talking about everything. And out of the blue, he goes, I studied philosophy, and Sanatana Dharma was one of the favorite things that we studied. And I was like, what the heck? And he's like, but I'm still a Christian. And I'm like, you want to come to church this Sunday? And I actually invited him, but he couldn't. He's got family things that have come up. But I asked him the question, what happened in your life that made you think about these things? How did you arrive at the place where you were asking these questions? And he had an amazing story. He said, when I was 10 years old, I got leukemia and was on my deathbed. And at the time, the treatments that they were giving me was to give me these crazy spinal taps and injections. And it made me so deathly sick that I lived in the hospital, and there would be days at a time where I couldn't even see the light. We had to shut all the windows out because any light that came in would actually blind me and give me such a bad headache that I had to stay covered. And he said, what was interesting was days of this, and he gradually was having to learn to live with it. But it was when the people would come visit him, and he would have to look back at them as a 10-year-old, and they couldn't make eye contact with him. And he wondered, why are they afraid of me? What are they afraid of? And he said he started asking himself that question, what are they afraid of? And what he arrived at was they were afraid of the death of themselves. They were afraid of the death of this ego. And when they looked at him as a 10-year-old who was completely become nothing, it was scary. And he said, from that point on, my entire life, have always thought about these things. And I double majored in religion and philosophy. And that set the whole trajectory for his life. But that's a very important thing for us to realize. What outwardly looks like the worst circumstance you can imagine for a 10-year-old, he said was the greatest blessing of his whole life. This is important for us to remember because life keeps coming, and it keeps coming, and new things happen that we don't expect. Always we think we got it figured out, and then next comes the next big gust from the other direction, and then we're back on the ground again, and like, how the heck did this happen? Well, we're still being forged. We're still a work in process, and that's okay. And I think part of this, tuning into this Easter Sunday and this crucifixion and resurrection, is for us just to say it's okay to go through the process of life and to let what's going to happen and to rise above it as we're truly able with God, because all these things they have one simple purpose: give our life to God. Just turn it over and love God. And we find that the more difficult it is, the easier it becomes to do that. That's the dual reality of this life, is that the test might actually get harder, it's true, but it gets easier to sit down and say, God, here we are again. I got nothing but you. Save me. Help me out here. At the farm, while I was in Hong Kong, it was a tough time. There was some really tough circumstances. And outwardly, I think the temptation is to look at these things for all of us there and focus on them and the challenges that they represent and how hard it was. And maybe like we did something wrong. But that's not the ultimate truth. The truth is, even in the few days since I've gotten home, I've looked at the farmers and what we've all been through. And I've had one of them say, hey, I think I need to take a seclusion Wednesday. I'm like, yes. And another one said, hey, I think I might try to jump in the car that's going to see the tulips at the village. And I was like, yes. It's amazing because everyone in their own way is taking what has been a very difficult circumstance for the farm family and is routing it back to God. Now, generally with the farm, I'm just happy to share, it's wonderful. We all are doing great. And all the things that are up here. And this is the most important on a day-to-day. But it's also important that we realize how real it is. Because living in community is really this path that Yogananda and the masters laid out for us as a real path of self-realization. Just being in community. Think about that for a second, what it means to live in community. It's not simply just the highfalutin ideal that we get to promote to others about how great community is. That might be the first thing that I would share with you. But as you step into it yourself, you realize the level that it requires of us to rise, to stay in the middle of it. There is no choice other than to rise. And that is how we have to start relating to our life all around us all the time, no matter what. But in community, there is no filter. You're eating with people, you're meditating with people, you're working with people. It is full on. And one of the things that really occurred to me in the aftermath of what has been a difficult situation was when we stayed together in the spirit of brotherhood, when we felt our true connection with one another and trusted in that, everything felt fine. Everything was okay. And when we applied rules and we thought we need to just do something for the sake of doing it because it has to be done, it no longer had the sense of brotherhood. This is an important thing for us to realize as community stewards, is that Master called them brotherhood colonies. And to live in that way is to constantly be asking how to help others, how to look out for others, how to be in tune with others. And so I watched the farmers doing that, trying their best to do that, each in their own way. And along with that came the expansion of reality, of awareness that actually hurts. Hard to believe that it could hurt, but it does. You can suddenly have so many more things that you're aware of that you get a physical headache, or you don't go to sleep because you have so many more things that God is basically dumping on you that you have to become aware of and think about, always pertaining to the reality of others. So what do we do with that? What do we do with all those extra things? Well, if I can tell you from my own experience, if I take them on as Zach, I get my butt kicked. And it feels really bad. But if I can learn, and if all of us can learn, to take whatever those difficult things are and say, God, this is still you. You're still inside of this. You're still here with everyone. Show me what to do. And really realize, we always say God is the doer. But when God dumps some stuff on you, we really start to learn how to feel like God is the doer when we know we can't do it. So this is the opportunity, these crucifixions, these crucibles that we get put through, that we ultimately rise. And I just think for us going into Easter Sunday, this is the beginning of this week. And let's tune into what it is for our ego to recede a little bit more this week and for our soul to ascend. And we have a whole week of just getting to meditate on this and really rise into our soul natures. And that's a great, great blessing. So I just want to wish everybody a happy Easter and Jai Gurus.
God is all I love. He is all